What is the best chess opening for white? I'm sure you think it's the fried liver, it might be the Italian, or it might even be the London. You. As a very qualified data analyst, I decided to find out myself. According to a poll in statistics, we see that 1e4 is the most common opening, and 1e5 is the most common response to the most common opening. Let's see what the highest scoring moves after pawn to e4 and pawn to e5 are. Knight f3, boring. Bishop c4, kind of boring. Knight c3, that's the same thing. d4, that's pretty interesting and that's a pretty good win rate. f4, wait, what?
Wait a minute!
A win rate of 53% and a loss rate of 44% means that you have a draw rate of 3%. Splitting that in half gives you 1.5%, and adding that to both sides gives you a win rate of 54.5% and a loss rate of 45.5%. That's pretty good and much better than the 50-50 that you'd normally get. This opening is called the King's Gambit. It was played often during the Romantic era of chess by legends like Paul Morphy, Adolf Anderssen, and Wilhelm Steinitz, but it still seems to score well today. The most common move in this position is pawn takes pawn, capturing the free pawn, and here we're going to play bishop to c4. This allows a check on h4 instead of the more common move, knight to f3. But bishop to c4 scores around 2% better, and for good reasons. It's a lot more confusing. So, the most common move is queen to h4 check, and after we move our king to safety, the most common move is bishop to c5. Now, black's threat is pretty obvious. He's trying to threaten checkmate, but we're not going to let that get in our way. We're going to go d4, expanding in the center and threatening the pawn. Black's bishop is going to have to move. We can go knight to f3, queen to f6, and now pawn to e5, attacking the queen. I'm just going by some of the most common moves here, and what you'd probably face. Queen c6, attacking the bishop, but so what? We'll just defend our bishop. Now black's problem is that we have a big center, and we're about to take our pawn back, so we're not going to be down material. The fact that our king is in the center isn't really important because black can't get to our king. Knight to e7, and we're going to take this free pawn. Black can castle, but after knight to c3, it's pretty obvious who's doing better. It's not black. We're about to connect our rook sometime. We can go g3 and king g2. We don't have to. We have a huge center, and black can't do anything about this. White is. Let's take a look at another second move. Let's say black doesn't accept our gambit and plays knight to c6. We're going to play knight to f3 as if nothing had happened. Pawn to d6, bishop c4, and the whole point of the king's gambit is revealed. We are going to castle sometime and take this pawn, where our rook will be open and targeting the f7 pawn. Bishop g4, castles, knight f6, and d3, protecting the pawn very logically. Bishop to e7. Both sides are just developing, and we're going to play c3, because this is a very nice move. Things could get ugly if black can take advantage of this pin, so we stop it right away. Castles, h3, winning the bishop pair, essentially. And after takes, a6, and a4, white has a commanding position. He can go bishop e3, knight d2, rook e1, finishing development, and at a good time, take this pawn and expose the black king. Now, in the main line after this position, not all players will go for queen to h4 check. There will be some players who will play the more natural and more common knight to f6, going after the pawn. We're going to protect this pawn while developing our pieces. Now, bishop to b4, knight to f3 is a pretty nice move, saying that even if you can take here, you're not going to win a pawn. Why does black not win a pawn here? Well, there's a pretty nice line. After bishop takes knight, pawn takes, a common tactic occurs. After knight takes pawn, bishop takes pawn, king takes, and queen to d5 check. This is called a fork, and we are winning our material back. The black king will move, and we will scoop up the knight. We are down a pawn, but we are going to take this pawn next and castle queenside. Our rook is going to go here, and black's king is still in trouble, even if he manages to exchange queens. This is pretty good for white. Alternatively, your opponent might choose to put the bishop on c5 rather than b4, but we can simply develop and continue as normal. Usually, we will go for pawn to d4, hitting back the bishop building a big center and taking back our pawn right away to essentially create the ideal dream position if you've ever seen that one. After castles, pawn to d4. Bishop b4 is the most common move. Castles, bishop takes knight. It appears that we're losing this pawn again. We don't have to lose this pawn, of course. There are lines where we don't. But for sake of argument, there's a pretty cool line. Pawn to e5. Instead of simply taking back and allowing black to take our pawn, this is not as good, but this is still fine for white. We would rather go pawn to e5 and counter attack the knight, so that after knight to e4, protecting the bishop, after he takes, black's gonna be like, I'm gonna take a pawn. We will take the bishop, and black can't take our pawn because his knight is trapped. Now, you might say, well, black didn't have to do any of this stuff you said, and you're absolutely correct. Black does not have to do anything that I said. But if black does nothing, white will go pawn to e5, bishop takes pawn, and then you will see how powerful this rook is targeting the f7 pawn. Pawn to e5, bishop takes pawn, bishop to g5 or knight to g5 is very strong, putting a lot of pressure on this pawn. In some lines, we'll go queen h5, and the attack essentially plays itself. It's really easy to play these positions once you have your rook on f1 opened up. So that's how you play the King's Gambit. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.